Let us not sugarcoat it. Wanya Morris did not just walk away from Brandy Norwood, he left her, shattered her, and stepped straight into the arms of Adina Howard. And that decision? It did not just break Brandy's heart. It broke her spirit. But this is not your typical 90s R&B love story, oh no. This is a storm of secret late-night phone calls, hidden studio whispers, and music industry betrayals so deep that fans are still arguing about what really went down. Brandy was America's sweetheart, a teenage icon whose voice melted radios across the country. And then there was Wanya, the golden voice from Boyz II Men, the man she trusted, admired, and quietly loved. He was not just a mentor. He was her everything. The connection was electric, forbidden, and dangerously real. Behind the lights and magazine covers, their mentorship turned into something else, something the world was not supposed to see. Brandy was just 16, full of dreams, navigating a world that devoured innocence. Wanya guided her, yes, but that guidance came with blurred lines and stolen emotions. He called it mutual. He called it young love. But fans would later call it something else, a heartbreak that defined Brandy's rise and her silence. And then came Adina Howard, the label's rising powerhouse. The woman whose confidence was magnetic and whose voice could shake a room. While Brandy was busy building her brand, Adina was building a connection with Wanya that would ignite one of the most shocking triangles in R&B history. Think of it, two women, both climbing the charts, unknowingly tied to the same man, both believing they were the one. Social media today would have exploded. Imagine the tweets, the Instagram lives, the think pieces. Wanya betrayed Brandy? Adina exposed the truth? Hashtags everywhere, fans choosing sides. But back then, the whispers stayed behind studio doors, until the truth began to leak. Wanya tried to defend himself later, saying they were all young, that it was innocent, that nobody got hurt. But Adina's interviews told another story, one Brandy probably never saw coming. Because Adina confessed. She admitted she fell for him, hard. And he felt the same. Atlantic Records executives warned her. Stay away from Wanya, they said. Do not ruin your career over this. But emotions do not listen to warnings. The chemistry was uncontrollable, the kind that destroys everything in its path. And when Brandy found out, the world around her cracked. She was filming Moesha, putting on smiles for the camera, pretending everything was fine while her heart was breaking off-screen. Fans saw perfection. But behind those perfect harmonies was a girl trying to hold it together as her mentor, her first love, became someone else's. That love triangle did not just leave emotional scars. It left career scars. Industry whispers turned into tension. Collaborations fell apart. And the once sweet Brandy, who sang of broken-hearted love, was now living it for real. Wanya and Adina's spark fizzled just as fast as it ignited, but the damage was done. Brandy was never the same. The innocence in her voice had a crack now, a pain that fans could feel. So, the next time you hear that smooth Boyz II Men track or Brandy's tear-soaked ballad, remember, behind those harmonies was heartbreak, betrayal, and a triangle that changed R&B forever. Some people even claim that this entire saga did not just fracture Brandy's relationship with Wanya, it strained her bond with her own mother, Sonia. Think about that for a second. The one person who protected her from the industry's chaos suddenly became part of the emotional crossfire. Why? Because when Wanya's attention shifted away, Brandy's world started collapsing from the inside out. And here is where things take a darker, more haunting turn. Years later, Adina Howard herself admitted that Wanya did not just flirt with her. He fell in love with her. That was not a fling. That was betrayal dressed as destiny. Imagine being Brandy, young, gifted, adored by millions, yet crumbling behind a perfect smile. The tabloids saw glamour. But behind that was a girl battling sleepless nights, paranoia, and the weight of a heartbreak she was never allowed to show. What she did not know then, what would haunt her for decades, was how public her private pain was about to become. Because the next chapter? It was not heartbreak. It was trauma. Brandy was not just nursing a broken heart. She was fighting to survive in an industry that demanded perfection from her every second. Between filming Moesha, recording new music, and keeping her composure in interviews, she was expected to be flawless even when she was falling apart. The betrayal by someone she trusted completely became the wound that never healed. By 1999, the cracks were impossible to hide. Reports surfaced that she was collapsing under the pressure, dizzy, nauseous, hallucinating. 3 days in a hospital bed later, and the world was still smiling at her posters, unaware that behind them was a woman barely holding on. Her mother could protect her career, but not her soul. She admitted that her eating spiraled out of control, dropping to barely 105 pounds just to appear camera perfect. The lights on stage blinded her to the shadows in her heart. Meanwhile, Wanya and Adina's relationship? It was not so secret anymore. The whispers were everywhere, in studio corridors, in record label meetings, and eventually, in fan rumors that refused to die. The triangle had gone from private heartbreak to public spectacle. Every award show, every photo shoot, every note she sang after that, it carried the invisible weight of betrayal. And even though she smiled, the fans who really listened could hear the pain in her voice. The R&B princess who once sang of innocent love was now haunted by its cost. Fast forward to 2021, decades later, and Wanya Morris decides to go live on Instagram. You would think time brings humility. You would think a man might look back and take accountability. But instead, he stood there, eyes calm, voice smooth, claiming it was all innocent. He said they were just young. That nothing happened until she was of age. That it was mutual. But the way he said it, the tone, the casual shrug, it reopened old wounds for everyone watching. Fans filled the comments, so no apology? She was a child. You broke her. It felt less like a confession and more like an escape from guilt. He framed himself as the misunderstood one. But the receipts, the interviews, the timelines, they all whispered otherwise. And while he spoke about moving on, his personal life told another story. 8 children. Multiple women. Rumors, contradictions, and drama that followed him like a shadow. His legacy became complicated, a mixture of brilliance and chaos. His sons are now chasing their own dreams in music, trying to rise from under a story that refuses to stay buried. Still, no matter how much time passes, no matter how many interviews are deleted or clarified, the triangle of Brandy, Wanya, and Adina remains the haunting chapter of 90s R&B. Fans still debate it. Journalists still dissect it. And in the corners of the internet, people still whisper about what really happened, who lied, who loved, and who walked away broken. Because it was never just gossip. It was pain turned into melody. It was a young woman's tears pressed into vinyl. And when you listen closely to those old songs, Broken-Hearted, Almost Doesn't Count, Have You Ever, you can hear her healing, her rage, her resilience. Before we even step into Brandy's later years, one thing is painfully clear, that love triangle did more than end a relationship, it rewired her idea of trust, fame, and love itself. She entered the industry with wide-eyed innocence and left that chapter with scars that fame could not hide. Because in the end, there were no winners, just 3 souls, trapped in a spotlight too bright for truth. After the storm of Wanya and Adina, Brandy tried to believe in love again, maybe hoping that this time, it would not end in betrayal, but in peace. For a brief moment, it looked possible. Enter Maze, hip-hop's golden boy, the smooth-talking rapper who had the charm, the fame, and the swagger to match hers. The world saw them together and thought, finally, she's healing. Music royalty meeting rap royalty, a power couple made for magazine covers. But behind those glossy smiles? Silence. Emptiness. Brandy later told Vibe magazine that it just did not work. Maze was not grounded, not serious, not ready. What looked perfect on red carpets was hollow in real life. Fame had a way of turning affection into performance, and Brandy was beginning to realize she had been living inside a script she never wrote. So, she walked away, not just from Maze, but from the illusion of celebrity love altogether. For the first time, she tried to love outside the spotlight. She met a man who was not famous, someone she thought saw Brandy the woman, not Brandy the icon. For a moment, she felt normal. But the fairy tale turned into a horror story fast. Jealousy took over. He resented her fame. Hated the attention. Hated the idea that other men admired her. He wanted to cage her, to shrink her light. In one terrifying moment, Brandy revealed he called her the B-word 13 times in one argument, and even put his hands on her. That was not love. That was control disguised as passion. And yet, in the way trauma often works, she blamed herself. Thought maybe she was the problem. Thought maybe she was too difficult to love. Imagine that, a woman adored by millions, yet made to feel utterly unworthy in private. But Brandy did what survivors do, she buried herself in work. She filmed Moesha by day, recorded songs by night, and plastered on a smile that hid the exhaustion underneath. Sleep was a luxury. Peace, a fantasy. The world demanded perfection, and she gave it, even as her body started to crumble. By 1999, her mind and body rebelled. Hospitalized after a breakdown, she later admitted it was not just fatigue, it was collapse. Her body screaming for rest, her soul begging for silence. That was her breaking point. By 2001, something inside her finally snapped, or maybe, finally woke up. She began cleaning her life like a house full of ghosts. Toxic friends? Gone. Bad habits? Replaced with healing. She went vegetarian, embraced mindfulness, and most painfully of all, she fired her mother, Sonia, as her manager. That decision cut deep. Sonia had built her career, shielded her, loved her, but their professional relationship had become a battlefield. To save their bond as mother and daughter, Brandy had to separate blood from business. It was not rebellion, it was survival. Even with all this growth, the past refused to stay buried. Every interview, every press run, someone would mention Wanya. Or Adina. Or that heartbreak. The world would not let her heal quietly. She was tired of being the girl who got hurt, tired of her pain being everyone else's entertainment. Then came her rebirth, the Full Moon Era. A masterpiece born from pain. The album was mature, futuristic, and unapologetically personal. Songs like He Is and When You Touch Me were not just about love, they were about reclaiming it. Critics called her the vocal Bible. But behind the praise, she was still bleeding, still fighting to convince herself that the love she sang about could ever exist for her. And just when it seemed she might have found balance, life threw another twist. She met producer Robert Smith. Their chemistry was instant. Soon after, she was pregnant, and for the first time, Brandy said she felt alive again. Holding her daughter, Sarai, in 2002, she said she finally understood unconditional love. That was the light she had been chasing all along. But peace never lasted long in Brandy's story. Soon, tabloids exploded with a new scandal, the marriage that never was. She had claimed she and Robert were married, but it came out that it was a lie. Not to deceive the world, but to protect herself, from judgment, from image damage, from the cruel expectations of a world that demanded female perfection. The backlash was brutal. Headlines called her fake. Commentators mocked her. But beneath it all was a young mother trying to hold on to her dignity in an industry that punished women for being human. Still, she refused to fold. She released Aphrodisiac, worked with Kanye West, kept acting, kept fighting. But the battle scars remained. In one candid interview, she confessed she no longer believed in true love. Every time she opened her heart, it ended in betrayal or headlines. Fame had turned love into performance art, and Brandy had learned the hardest truth of all. In Hollywood, love always has an audience, and that audience rarely forgives. But here's the haunting truth about Brandy Norwood: the same pain that nearly broke her, built her into something greater. Every heartbreak carved her voice deeper. Every betrayal sharpened her lyrics. Her pain became poetry. Her tears turned into timeless melodies. Fans did not just listen to Brandy, they felt her. Because she never hid her wounds, she sang them. The industry expected perfection. But she gave them truth. And that truth, unpolished, vulnerable, trembling, became her superpower. Fans connected with her because she was real. She did not pretend to have it figured out. She showed the cracks, and somehow, those cracks reflected everyone's own heartbreaks back at them. Her vulnerability became her armor. Her voice, her rebellion. Looking back, that triangle with Wanya and Adina was not just celebrity gossip, it was the beginning of Brandy's lifelong journey through love, loss, and self-discovery. That heartbreak planted the seed that would grow into her greatest transformation. It taught her that love without respect is poison. That validation from others cannot replace self-worth. That sometimes, the people who inspire your most beautiful songs are the same ones who leave your deepest scars. It showed her how dangerous it is to confuse attention with affection, and how fame can amplify heartbreak until it echoes louder than the music itself. That lesson would follow her for years, shaping how she loved, how she trusted, how she survived. By the late 2000s, Brandy had entered a quieter phase, reflective, grounded, and painfully self-aware. The girl who once sang about first love was now a woman speaking openly about depression, loneliness, and rebuilding herself from scratch. She admitted that after so many broken relationships, she had to learn to love herself first. That self-love did not come easy, it came through therapy, solitude, and the courage to sit in silence with her own pain. In one interview, she said something that stayed with her fans forever: "I used to measure my worth by how much I was loved. Now I measure it by how much peace I feel." That was not just growth, that was rebirth. And that old wound, the Wanya chapter, no longer carried bitterness. Just clarity. She no longer saw it as betrayal, but as a lesson. A painful, necessary lesson that shaped everything that came after. As for Wanya, his life went on: music, family, and a legacy that remained tangled between brilliance and chaos. But no matter how far apart they drifted, their story, Brandy, Wanya, and Adina, remains an unforgettable chapter in R&B history. It was not just about fame or scandal, it was about what it means to grow up under the world's gaze, and pay for love with your innocence. Brandy's story mirrors what so many live through, just magnified 1,000 times by fame. She kept loving even after love broke her. Kept singing even when her voice trembled. Kept showing up even when her heart wanted to disappear. And that, not the gossip, not the charts, is what makes her story immortal. She turned pain into art, heartbreak into healing, and herself into a symbol of endurance. But her trials were far from over. After the Wanya and Adina era faded, Brandy found herself in another whirlwind, working with producer Rodney "Darkchild" Jerkins on her third album, and falling for his cousin, Robert Smith. It seemed like a fresh start, a different kind of love. Brandy said it was the first time she felt fully loved, that nothing else mattered but happiness. It was eerily similar to her first love story, but this time, she believed it might finally end differently. It did not. By 2004, Robert publicly revealed they were never legally married, and made cutting remarks about her past. The headlines exploded again. The fake marriage scandal dominated gossip sites, dragging her back into the same public scrutiny she had fought to escape. Around that same time, her engagement to NBA player Quentin Richardson fell apart after just 14 months. It was another heartbreak, another headline, another reminder that the spotlight had no mercy. To outsiders, it was just tabloid drama. But to Brandy, it was a pattern, the same emotional loop that began with Wanya. The same lesson replaying, louder each time: fame and love rarely coexist peacefully. Even in the 2010s, the conversation did not die. She was linked to Sir the Baptist, Ryan Press, and other high-profile figures, and every time, the internet dissected it like a crime scene. Every man was compared to Wanya. Every breakup became a theory thread. Every smile, a speculation. But underneath all that noise, Brandy kept evolving. She was no longer chasing love, she was chasing peace. The scars from the triangle never truly vanished. They became her roadmap, painful, but guiding her toward boundaries, wisdom, and a kind of strength that only comes after surviving the impossible. And that brings us to the question fans still ask today, decades later: who really hurt Brandy the most? Was it Wanya, the mentor who betrayed her innocence? Adina, the rival who unknowingly stole her peace? Or the cruel machinery of fame that forced her to grow up before she ever got to be young? That question still divides fans across generations. In forums, podcasts, TikTok theories, and comment sections, people still debate what really happened. Some blame Wanya. Some say Brandy should have known better. Others say the industry failed her. Even back in the 90s, other stars, Monica, TLC, and countless insiders, whispered about the chaos. They saw it, they joked about it, but they knew better than to intervene. Because in Hollywood, young love burns bright, right before it explodes. And when it did, it left a mark that time could not erase. Because Brandy's story was never just about one heartbreak. It was about every young woman who ever loved too deeply, trusted too soon, and paid the price for it in public. It was about survival in a world that romanticizes pain but rarely helps you heal from it. And maybe that is why, even after all the chaos, she still stands tall. Because Brandy Norwood is not just the voice of a generation, she is the proof that sometimes, the most beautiful songs are born from the most broken hearts. While Brandy was out there filming Moesha, recording chart-topping albums, attending red carpets, and holding the image of the perfect young superstar, behind the flashbulbs, she was breaking. Every smile was an act. Every laugh, a disguise. Sources close to her said that even in her brightest moments, she was quietly falling apart. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the pressure to remain flawless, it all began to fuse into something darker: emotional exhaustion. The kind that seeps into your bones and steals